So I got through all the 8 episodes. Um, it was great. You were phenomenal.
Thank
Um, and I wanted to know, a lot of people kind of have this idea in their head of who Anne was and what she was like, and I think it's kind of gotten, I want to say diluted. It's probably not the best word, but some kind of sense of who she actually was, I think, has gotten lost with all the over the years. How did you go about jumping into this and kind of trying to bring her back to life?
Well, I was in the same group of those people. I thought she was very innocent, reserved little girl who went through something traumatic. But when I didn't get to read her diary at first, when I was in my education system until I was auditioning for the process, I was like, "Oof, this is a great project, let me read it."
Mhm.
And my mouth was wide open, wide open. I mean, the things that she said, one of the things that completely, it was the first page I opened and read was, I wanted to smack my mother across the face. And I thought, wow, that's not the girl I thought she was. And when I just kept reading, I really fell in love with her because she was a lot more feisty and fiery and stronger than I thought. So for me, I just took her diary and I used it as a template of how her mind works. So I just kept reading it and audiobooking it, trying to see how she thinks and how she thinks of people and how she reacts to certain words being said, so
Mhm.
that it I could get into her mind and less of her character that people might perceive her as. That's why I decided not to look at any other versions of Anne that have been portrayed, and I decided also not to read Miep's autobiography because I didn't want to have any other perceptions of Anne. I wanted it to be my Anne and herself, as in
Mhm.
her mindset, and not what people see her as. So that's how I approached it. That's how I approached it.
And kind of looking at, so you have the moment with her mother. I was going to ask about that relationship. Um, Acting those scenes out and trying to get that picture of her that she has in her diary, butting it up against how everybody knows how things turned out. Was it at all difficult to get yourself in the mindset to play some of that tension, to even to do some of the, more upbeat moments as well?
I mean, it's weird. When I was filming, I really did forget the ending. I feel like this whole show does that. It kind of rips away the ending that you know, and it kind of gives you this false sense of hope that things might end up better.
Mm.
So during the process, it did the same thing to me. I mean, I was really involved in her life of a day to day instead of her whole life from beginning to end.
Mhm.
So for me, it wasn't that difficult. I've got to say, playing the high stakes moment, definitely with a mirror. I mean, I found them great. I really got into the grittiness of Anne with the mum, and it was so fun to play with. And we did a lot of improvisation in some of those scenes. And Amira is amazing in improv, and we really played off each other. We were really invested in our people that we were. It was it came naturally, and definitely for the upbeat moments, I found them amazing because everything of this show is obviously a very dark,
Mhm.
not theme, but story. So playing the upbeat moments, I think everybody enjoyed them. It was kind of like a relief, and that kind of relays into their real life because anytime they did have an upbeat moment, that was a relief in their life because everything was so dark all the time, being closed in the annex. So I feel like when they had a moment to laugh or they had a moment to do something that just wasn't so, well, depressing, they
Mhm.
took it and they did it for 100% with everything they had, they did it. And that's the same thing that we did because we found it great when we had a moment of laughter or release from the dark themes of the show.
Going kind of a little bit along with that, I had a question about when they have the Hanukkah treats from the Dr. Pfeffer, and, you know, scenes like that one, or scenes where they're really just utterly in defiance of their situation. Did you at all look into maybe any other stories in that history, or did you stay completely with what you knew from the diary to try to get a grasp on those?
What do you mean?
So just looking at the history of not just the Frank family, but kind of other examples of resistance during that time period. They had their celebration, they went downstairs, they listened to the radio when they really shouldn't have. And then there were other families doing maybe not the exact same thing, but even, within the camp situation, there would be little smaller celebrations and stuff like that. How much historically did you look at outside of Anne?
So bringing back to my education, we never touched
Mm,
upon, Frank. We touched upon World War II, but we never touched upon, the Frank family or any other family. So I haven't really been educated in that sense. But for me in this project, I really wanted to focus on them because obviously this was less obviously it was very educational doing this, but it
mm,
was less of educating myself. I had to portray a person that is so famous and hold so much respect for somebody, and I didn't want other people's stories to necessarily sway the way that I would perceive her. It's in that sense, I have then afterwards gone into a bit more research on things. Into other families, I haven't yet, but it is something I have been interested in doing. But I did just focus on the Frank family for this project because I thought it's just so important when you're doing something like this to stay truthful to them
mm,
and to stay truthful to what you're doing and not let your mind go from other places. Because when you're in the scene, you can't think, oh, other families, obviously they were thinking other families might be doing this, but I
mhm.
can't think of a particular story and think of a particular person because at that time they wouldn't have known what they would have been going through, these other families or these other people. So it's not nothing that necessarily I didn't want to, as being Anne Frank, connect to other people because Anne Frank wouldn't have known them. So that's the reason why I didn't really go into researching the other families. I wanted it to just be, in a way, isolated the same way that Anne Frank was isolated.
That makes sense. So, I guess the other question you did touch on that you didn't really go into this very much in your education. Are are you at all surprised by that looking back? Are you at all surprised by any of what's going on in terms of these stories in some places actively being taken out of the curriculum and in other places just kind of slowly fading out? Have you thought about what a project might like this might do or how it might be received within that kind of situation?
Oh, 100%. Well, doing this, I'm quite amazed that we never went into detail about it or that we never got assigned the diary to read and to be educated on. I mean, we get assigned so many things that are not pointless, obviously, but this is just a lot more important and it's a true story. It's something that we should live by and see not happen again, which unfortunately it is starting to happen again in different parts of the world, which is awful. And I heard about America banning, not banning, but taking out the Anne Frank diary from the education system, which I think is completely silly. I mean, it's ridiculous. How can you take something so important out of an education system? I mean, we are the last generation to have Holocaust survivors. How are we meant to be educated on it? How are we meant to remember these stories if it's not actually being taught? Which I can't even. It makes me quite angry. Um, but I why I think a small light is really good and therefore coming at the right time is that this would be amazing to put into the education system because this was actually interest children and it will make them focus on the story and be educated on the story instead of reading it, because I know myself I'm not a very good reader at all and I would find it very hard to process what I'm reading or to remember all of it. And definitely if it's a documentary, that is quite hard for kids to focus on because it's somebody lecturing you for 3 hours about a very hard-hitting hard-hitting story. But this project is done in a non-documentary style. So it's something that you can watch. It's something, there's ups and there's downs. It's not somebody talking straight at you for 3 hours. It's something that you can get involved in and immersed in and want the best for them. You get connected to it emotionally, and I feel like this would be amazing to put into schools, and they can really be educated by it in a completely different way than they have been before. I think that's why it's more like it's completely amazing and it's coming at a great time. And I feel like I hope that the people that have tried or are going to take Anne Frank's diary out watch this and realize that that is a silly, silly mistake and they should keep it in.
It really should. It's been a little bit upsetting over here, kind of seeing the news every day too. Um, were you at all surprised by how large of a role Anne has in a series that kind of on the surface is supposed to be Meep's story, but with them being so interwoven, it's almost as if, I mean, for me, it felt like I was watching just a window in that happened to be through me. Did you get that sense when you were filming it, when you were working through it, or
N- I'm a bit confused on the question.
oh,
How
sorry.
big, how was I surprised on how big of a role Anne Frank was within this series because it was meant to be the perspective of Meep? Is that the question?
Yes.
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 Okay. No, when I was filming it, it was clear that it was perspective of Meep, and that's the reason also that I wanted to be part of this project. I thought it was incredible that it was going through Meep's perspective because her story hasn't been told, and Anne Frank's has multiple
Mhm.
times. It has in detail. I mean, she has her diary, she has everything. It's very known, um, and when reading the scripts and knowing that it was about Meep and her perspective only, I was in awe by it. I became attached to it when I realized that that's what it was about. I think yes, Anne is obviously a main role within the show because well, it's Anne Frank, and also that she was the one that properly connected everyone together in some sort of a sense. And I think that Meep didn't obviously have children at that time. She was very young, also going through something. Um, but I feel like Anne was felt like her daughter or somebody that she could take care of. And I know that as Anne, she saw her as a mother figure and a sister figure that she actually connected to because she had a very prickly relationship with her mum,
Mhm.
and her sister was very different to her. So it was hard for her to connect with her in that sense. So I think both of those figures went straight to Meep, and their relationship is so special, and it's so special to me as well. I mean, playing the scenes with Belle were just incredible, and it felt like that connection was true to a sense. So I'm just quite grateful that Anne was a main role in this, and that I could be a part of it and bring Meep's story to life because I think Anne Frank was a very big part of Meep's life, and that's why um, my role, in a sense,
Mhm.
is big in the show. But it definitely was about Meep, and you can see and you can tell that it was on the perspective of Meep.
That makes sense. Uh, going back to, you mentioned working with Belle and how good it felt. Um, was there any particular scene that you worked with her that was particularly easy, particularly difficult, just because of what was going on? Even a particular favorite that you guys did together?
I do have a favorite. It's the scene where Anne is talking about she's talking about her marriage with Jan, and then talks about Peter, and then her relationship with Peter, just a little bit, just to touch upon. When she's brushing her hair, we're doing each other's hair. That was my favorite scene to do with Belle. I mean, it was just incredible. That it took a while, but it was so much fun, and it felt so sentimental and meaningful when we were doing it. It was calming. It was so calming when we were doing it. It was, it just felt like a much older sister and a younger sister together in a room, um, talking about it. And, you know, she is incredible, Belle.
Mhm.
She's genuinely incredible. She brings this naturalistic sense to everything, and it makes you calm down and makes you just okay, zen out. We are just right now here, we're not doing a scene, there's not a camera, there's not like 50 people looking at you at once. Um it feels amazing doing it with her, and she allowed like a road for that Meep and Anne relationship, a very
Mhm.
clear path for me to walk down into and just be able to do it. She really helped me throughout the show. She was a great person to work with.
And was there anybody else that you particularly enjoyed working with, a particular scene, particular day?
Particular day. Well, I've got to say, I love the wedding scene. That was so much fun. I love filming with everybody in that. Um, that was really fun because I got to be at 11 for like a day, and I was like, "That's great. And I will take that." And it was it was so much fun. I got to like roam about the streets and do whatever. Being an 11-year-old, it's quite freeing being an 11-year-old. And definitely if you have to stay in it for a while, a couple hours, it was great. It was genuinely probably one of the most fun days because I mean, yes, it was long, but it was sunny, which was amazing. And I thought it was such a heartfelt scene to do because it was their wedding. And obviously through Anne's perspective, it was so beautiful wedding. Everything was love and everything like that. Obviously not for
Mhm.
me, but for Anne's perspective it was. So I saw it like that. And I got to get out of the annex, which was quite fun as well, because obviously I filmed there a lot.
Was gonna say, I guess you were pretty isolated yourself, kind of on a single set for most of this thing. So that kind of probably made obviously not the same, but made it a little bit easier to get into it, I would assume. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah, it did.
yeah. It's when you think about the way this when this project kind of everybody sees it, how much pressure did you feel to get it right, if any? In terms of how are people gonna look at this? Do you think about that at all? Are you worried at all?
Do I think about it? Just a little bit, just a little bit. Yeah, I've put pressure on, not on myself, but I do feel the pressure to get it right because I mean, Anne is she's incredible and her story has touched so many people. And I want to do I want to be true by her, and I want to get it right for her and let her story be told and her personality be told. I don't want that to get lost. I don't want people to have a false sense about her. I want people to see her the way she was because she was strong in who she was. She never doubled down in the family. She was herself, and that was it. And that's what people will get. So that's what I wanted to give that same energy that this was Anne, and the person that you might have thought she was is just not true, so you can't get upset about it. You know, she's such a special person, and at such a young age, she just knew herself, or well, knew herself. She knew part of herself. She knew her core, which I think is amazing. Not many 13-year-olds know their core, know what they want to do, or know, how to write so well. I mean, I didn't. I still don't. She's just incredible. She's had such a raw, natural talent for something, and the fact that she got to be able to do it and to be able to make her hope be her talent, I think is incredibly special and it's something that people should learn about. I mean, if you have a skill that you love doing, you should try and make it in something you do every day and not something that you do as a hobby or part-time.
That I think they told us we're good